Coming up on the Get Lean, Eat Clean podcast, a common question is, well, is red meat bad for you? What would you say to a client that would ask you that question?
So the first thing I say when we start talking about food, especially if it's someone who I think is really indoctrinated into that idea, is that you're not going to like what I have to tell you, because it's alarming and scary to hear from a doctor that, hey, what you've been told for the last 30, 40 years is just wrong. But that's the truth.
Hello, and welcome to the Get Lean, Eat Clean podcast. I'm Brian Grin, and I'm here to give you actionable tips to get your body back to what it once was 5, 10, even 15 years ago. Each week, I'll give you an in-depth interview with a health expert from around the world to cut through the fluff and get you long-term sustainable results. This week, I interviewed Dr. Gary Shlifer. He's a board-certified internal medicine physician specializing in preventative care, nutrition, and anti-aging medicine. We discuss many topics around our healthcare system, disease prevention, and how to live optimally through a Sapien lifestyle. We also touched on 5 pillars of being a happy human. We talked about red meat, cholesterol, also got into his morning ritual, and much, much more. So I know you'll enjoy this episode. I did. Enjoy, and thanks so much for listening. All right, welcome to the Get Lean, Eat Clean podcast. I'm Brian Grin, and my guest today is Dr. Gary Shlifer. And he is a board-certified internal medicine physician specializing in preventative care, nutrition, metabolism, and anti-aging medicine. He's also the founder of Evolve Healthcare, which is in LA, and they do a bunch of stuff, but a multi-specialty integrative medicine clinic. And we're going to talk about more of what they do. He also helped co-found Sapien, which is an organization focused on promoting health education, advancing health information technology. So welcome on the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Brian.
Yeah, I appreciate it. And got a bunch to talk about today. But before we get into that, why don't you maybe just give us some background of your journey into health and helping others?
Yeah, I mean, so I was trained as a, internal medicine physician. I went to medical school, kind of eyes wide open, ready to be a doctor. Little did I know that they were going to train me to basically only treat disease and not prevent disease and not maintain health. Kind of as I went through my training, I really developed a passion for end-of-life care, which might sound odd for some of you listening, but for me, focusing all of my energy on just treating disease never made any sense. And end-of-life care is a place where I actually was able to help people in a meaningful way and really affect people and their family in a positive way. Over the last about 4 or 5 years, working with Brian Sanders of Food Lies and my Sapien team, we've developed, a program that I'm really proud of, and it is focused on lifestyle medicine. It's focused on teaching people how to eat. At its heart, it's teaching people how to eat, but it's really teaching people how to live in the modern world, live a healthy lifestyle and not, be dependent on pharmaceuticals, be dependent on treating their disease, but rather preventing it. And I think that's best done through lifestyle medicine. You mentioned the word integrative medicine, which is another way of thinking about what I do, in the sense that I've not shunned my training. I believe, a lot of the tools I've learned are very powerful, and certainly there's a role for pharmaceuticals, but, the integration is really my ancestral approach to health combined with the Western medicine strategies that I was trained to use. So that's kind of where I'm at now. And we're working really hard. My clinic, I have a clinic in Los Angeles called Evolve Healthcare. And that's a full medical practice where we, as you mentioned, do a lot of different things, but I definitely practice integrative medicine there and heal people. And I'm very proud of that. And and that's kind of, my 2 main projects, the Sapien and Evolve. And I do a couple other things on the side trying to help people, but that's really where my practice has evolved into.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about like the future of healthcare, and like a clinic like yourselves, like Evolve. Really, I would hope would you see these more popping up here and there. Hopefully, more in Chicago. I know in LA. Do you see that being the future of medicine?
I hope so.
Yeah.
I think that the challenges are huge for a doctor to gain a foothold and have a private practice and really drive their own kind of practice. I think I'm lucky in that I have a huge support system. My mom is a doctor. My parents really pushed me to leave the sort of, for lack of a better word, corporate world. But I definitely worked for a hospital organization for the first few years after residency, and I was definitely trained to be an employee. No one ever showed me how to run a business, bill insurance, any of the subtle, intricate things that you need to understand to successfully run a practice. So I've sort of had to teach myself. And again, I credit my parents for pushing me and guiding me through that process. Um, but also, the Sapien team, but by giving me a unique platform to sort of teach people, it's helped me expand my practice. So to answer your question, I don't know. I don't know that there's a lot of clinics doing what I'm doing. I know there's a lot of maybe like naturopathic physicians. There's older folks that have gone through regular Western medicine and moved into what we call functional medicine, which is a pretty popular kind of avenue for Western medicine doctors to take once they realize that there's more to it than just pharmaceuticals. But
Right.
I don't know. You see companies like Forward and Next Health who are kind of biohackers, or they have fancy equipment and they try to make everything a little more digital and a little, more streamlined. But I don't really know that there's a big movement to really manage patients in a non-disease oriented model, right? Like, I don't know that that's true. I still think that lives in these communities, like, your listeners, our listeners on Sapien podcast and PQman. But, you know, I know, here's what I definitely know, that there is an appetite for it. Also, no pun intended. There's people out there that are seeing through, they go to their doctor every year, get told to eat a low fat diet. They don't do well. They go back. They're like, oh, you're not listening to me. Here's drugs. Eat a low fat diet, eat a balanced diet. And I think eventually people figure it out and they're like, there's more to it than that. And whether they go and find a naturopathic physician or functional medicine physician or someone like myself who's sort of gone on their own to find a way to help people, it's out there. I don't know if it's gaining. I don't know that there's like a ton of money in it either, right? And if you take the kind of functional medicine route, most of those doctors are asking a lot of money, right? Like each visit is very expensive, and that really limits the access. So at Evolve, I've taken the approach where I take health insurance, and I even take an HMO that I work with that I got a good contract with. And for now, at least, I try to create access to me and my team in as many avenues as I can. And it's not about making money. It's about having a sustainable business, right? Like I have to make some money, but it's about building a community. And again, like at Evolve, with the Sapien thing, it's all starting to really turn into that. And, we have something called the Sapien Tribe, which kind of opens up the door to people from around the world to talk to us and our health coaches. So, just doing what I can to create access to someone who understands what we're talking about, which is, lifestyle medicine.
Right. Like preventative care. And you're seeing this on a daily basis. What would you say are like the biggest things that help impact people's lives? Obviously, you talk about, eating right, working out, things like that. But what's the most common issues you come across, and then what's a good way of preventing that?
Yeah. So when I talk about being a happy, healthy human, and I talk about this with any patient that's willing to listen, and some people don't want to hear it, right? Some people show up and they're like, give me my cholesterol drug. I'm worried about my LDL. And I'm like, okay, fine. But whatever you want, because I try to meet people where they're at. But I have like my 5 pillars of being a happy, healthy person. And that's food, movement, stress management, sun exposure, and sleep. And I would say that those 5 things are where most people are missing the mark. A lot of folks, we have a lot of education about exercise. So a lot of people have that movement piece worked out. Nowadays, a little more difficult with the gyms closed and all, but still, I think people understand that. But certainly there's not a focus on, there's definitely not a focus on stress management strategies. It's not something we often say, on these podcasts that, a doctor gets about 4 hours of nutrition education. Well, we get 0 hours on stress management education, right? Like that's not a thing, right? We don't talk about mindfulness anywhere. And I think that's very important. Sleep hygiene and sleep strategies and supplementation and different things you can do for sleep. Huge point that I talk about. Like we can talk about it today, but it's just so important. And then people are often surprised when they see sun on there. And I'm like, well, don't be surprised. You're a solar powered creature. You're supposed to be outside. You're supposed to be making natural vitamin D. I believe vitamin D is one of these sort of, it's an obvious one and yet so contentious. It's a pro hormone that changes your whole physiology, and it never used to be an issue because humans would be outside regularly working, whatever, doing everything. Not anymore, and it's been a long time. And so that's where supplementation is really important. I think I came out of training thinking, supplements, you're making expensive urine, just like everyone else. These common misconceptions about nutrition and supplementation and lifestyle. And vitamin D is one of those that I really promote, the supplementation of vitamin D, because it's hard to get people in the sun. So that's something really important. But then obviously the heart of it is the food. And many people come to my clinic or reach out to us, and they feel like they haven't figured out whether they've jumped on the carnivore sort of movement, whether they're trying keto and it works for them. It works for some people. It really doesn't work for everyone. Or they've been doing paleo, and paleo is a great strategy that really incorporates a lot of good ideas. I don't really think most people have a grasp on the whole nutrition sort of scope of it. And with Sapien, what we try to do is teach people how to fish by understanding why something like keto does work and doesn't work, why something like paleo makes sense. Our program overlaps with many of these concepts, but I think we have a unique approach in that we integrate all of these different sort of nutritional approaches so that you can find the one that works for you. And you don't have to be in a camp. I'm a carnivore or I'm keto. Like, you don't need to do all that. Sometimes you're carnivore. Sometimes you're pescatarian. Right. Sometimes you just want to have some vegetables. But when you do, you want to eat those thoughtfully and understand what you're putting in your body and how those, vegetables or animal products were procured and prepared. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of my thing, is really want to get people to understand the nuts and bolts of it and challenge them to expect more from themselves. You can't mindlessly go through the store and grab whatever looks good. You are susceptible to the bullshit advertising and manipulation that these companies are definitely participating in. So, in order to do that, you got to learn. You've got to be motivated. There's a million ways to do that. These podcasts is how I learn so much of what I, promote. But there's books, we have a program, other people have programs, there's different ways to do this. And it's just a very small community, compare us to the plant-based community, and there's just not that many of us. So.
Right. Yeah, no, for sure. And, for me, I got into intermittent fasting, and there's a community that's been growing, but there's no one makes money when you fast, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
So a lot of times I'm assuming the trainings that you got for being just a general practitioner was backed by a lot of deep pockets, pharmaceutical companies and things like that. Would you think that changing how doctors are being trained is the first step?
That's the dream step.
Yeah.
So if it could be the first step and I had the platform and there were the ears were open, I think that's the step that will ultimately affect the most people. So I think that And I love that you asked that question, because I think in a way that's where Sapien, that's our mission is to educate the educators. And I think if we can do that, if we can create a platform that really makes sense intellectually to those people, and it makes sense in an education way, in the sense that, okay, if you're carnivore, and I love carnivore, but if you're just promoting carnivore, it's a very narrow focus. And I don't think a major institution is ever going to just like jump on it and start promoting carnivore.
Right.
But if carnivore is packaged within a framework where you're like, hey, what is the ultimate elimination diet? We all understand that an elimination diet is probably an essential tool to help people, because food allergies and just toxins in our food system are a big deal.
Right.
I think that when you package carnivore in that way, you could bring that to doctors and doctors in training. I have some colleagues that I'm very close with at University of New Mexico, and for the last year, we've been working to try to figure out how to incorporate the Sapien diet and lifestyle program into at least their residence education. And it's challenging because, there's evidence that goes both ways. And as it is, the Western medicine education system is very anchored to these old ideas of the balanced diet, the DASH diet, the Mediterranean diet, all these old ideas driven by, epidemiological evidence, which isn't great evidence. And what we're promoting is anchored in research, but also in some common sense understanding of our ancestry and our history as human beings. And that's a tough pill to swallow for education institutions, because everything that I was taught is less than 100 years old and is like driven by this evidence-based medicine model. And again, not here to poo-poo evidence-based medicine, but to say that it is one tool of teaching people. It is a great tool. It's really good to judge whether or not one drug or one treatment protocol is better than another. It can do that, but to justify intermittent fasting, for example, it's going to be very challenging to do that, even though it obviously works, it's obviously safe, and it's obviously consistent with our physiology. But how do you prove that? Well, doing feeding studies is very, very, very challenging. We know that. That being said, in the last few years, there's been some really great stuff come out. Specifically, I always refer to the Virta Health studies on type 2 diabetes and using a low-carb, whole foods-based diet with intermittent fasting to really reverse metabolic disease, essentially. But again, that kind of stuff is ignored. And when you go to an organization like the one I'm talking about, you really have to convince them. What I'm doing on my end is using that protocol and having awesome results. Now, again, other people have done it. They've done it with even more people that I'm doing it with. It gets ignored. It's hard to convince, but I think that, it only takes one meaningful moment where you can really show that it's effective. It only takes one good article, maybe one good doctor that gets on TV one day. Right. I'm ready to go. Like that's what I'm here for is, I try to like really think about using words and using communication that's not so divisive, right? I'm not sitting here poo-pooing any particular strategy, but we have to put it all together in order to help people. And I think that's what we're trying to do. At least that's what we believe we're doing. And I know that there's a lot of doctors that support us. Again, my friends that work there are really pushing to get us involved. And yeah, I mean, I think one day it will happen. I don't know if that's this year or 5 years from now or 10 years from now, who knows, but we're going to keep trying.
Yeah. Well, more clinics like yourself that pop up, I think, and just people vote with their dollars. They if they really want to be preventative and get ahead of the issue instead of waiting till something happens, and then then they have to rely on Western medicine more, because like you said, there's a time and place for it. But you want to be proactive, and I think the more podcasts that are out there and things, and it's just it becomes more mainstream.
It's coming. I mean, it's coming, and we're trying to lead the fight, and it is a fight because everything I say, every time I don't even have that much of a following yet, but every time I say something, it gets challenged and attacked. And my approach is I'm not going to fight back. I'm going to be thoughtful and share my ideas. But in the end of the day, we're fighting. We're fighting with a huge, huge misunderstanding of what human nutrition should look like. And it
Right.
takes all of us. It takes you. It takes me. It takes all of our colleagues out there. And I know we're all having each other on each other's podcasts. And yeah, that's what we have to do. We have to do that because,
Yeah.
there's a lot of money in grains. There's a lot of money in seed oils.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of money in shitty food products that are really, marketed as health products. They're marketed as real human food, and it's not.
Right.
And that's tough for people to hear.
Okay. So, I know you mentioned the five pillars of was it five pillars of a happy human?
Happy, healthy human. Yeah.
I wanted to just come back to this because you said it fast, and I just wanted you to say it one more time with sleep, stress, sun, food,
And movement. Well, nutrition and movement. I say movement because exercise can be scary to people. And again, I'm not here to scare people off. I think you can go out and take a brisk 30-minute walk where you get a sweat, you get some sun exposure,
Mm-hmm.
and you've knocked out two of the pillars for the day. And so it's very, very simple to do these five things. Brian came up with a term. It's like ancestral hacking, something like that. But the idea is we're trying to replicate the experience of our hunter-gatherer ancestors. And if we evolved over millions of years to succeed in one kind of environment, and now in a very short period of time, we've created this sort of abnormal environment that's making us unhealthy, then we can reframe our perception, and instead of trying to drive disease out with drugs and surgery like the allopathic model, we can find our homeostasis and find our body's natural ability to heal itself and find balance by hacking those lifestyle components that we've essentially forgotten about. And that's what those five things are.
And it's interesting. I had to take a little pause because of my dogs, but if you think of dogs and how they can sort of address three of these things right off the bat, because stress for sure, sun, right, getting out and then moving, walking. I always talk about getting up and going for a walk after you eat or when you get up first thing in the morning. And it's like, it just hit me. I'm like, well, a dog can really address three of the five.
That's why there's research that shows that people with dogs are happier,
Mm-hmm.
they live longer, and they have less chronic disease.
Yeah.
Now, is that going to be related to the love and interspecies relationship that you have? That's certainly a factor. But I think it's what you're saying. I think it exposes you to more normal life, right? We're also in this like hyper clean sort of like guarding ourselves from all pathogens mentality, and that's not the way we evolved. We evolved in conjunction with the dirt in our backyards because we used to live in that backyard. Mm-hmm. Now we live on the cement block, and we don't want to let our feet touch the dirt because it's gross. It's not, right? So I think the dog really does so many things to reconnect us with our hunter-gatherer origins. It's so powerful. I got a dog. I wanted a dog my whole life. Mm-hmm. Got a dog this last year during this whole pandemic. Yeah. And he's a blessing. I mean, he reminds us what makes us happy. He gets us outside when we're not feeling so good. Mm-hmm. He makes us smile. He makes us run around and play. And I come home from a tough day dealing with really frustrated patients, and I've got this smiling little guy that's ready to go outside and go for a little run. And it's like, I don't even have to try, and my pillars are knocked off. I eat a Sapien diet. I make sure I sleep, and the rest of it just happens because I'm living a life that's like full, and it's not just sitting and staring at some news feed telling me all the scary stuff that's going on in the world. That's not healthy.
Right. No, I agree. I have one and I just got a second. So it's pretty still in the morning here and I've gone on 2 walks already. So I know with the pandemic, a lot dogs have been going, which is great.
Yeah.
A lot of dogs are being adopted that need homes, and that's a whole nother topic, but that's been sort of a positive from all of this, these dogs being adopted. But let's touch on the 2 other pillars. Since we already figured out, hey, get a dog, you'll get 3 out of the 5 done. Why don't we hit a little bit on food? And, a common question is, well, is, red meat bad for you? What would you say to a client that would ask you that question?
So the first thing I say when we start talking about food, especially if it's someone who I think is really indoctrinated into that idea, is that you're not going to like what I have to tell you, because it's alarming and scary to hear from a doctor that, hey, what you've been told for the last 30, 40 years is just wrong. But that's the truth. And I started off like that because you have to accept and embrace that, or at least open your mind to the possibility that the nutrition recommendations as they stand are wrong. I then gauge based on the person. So we can take the evidence-based route and start talking about the epidemiological research that was done on meat in general and red meat specifically, and dispel the efficacy of that research. And then you have to have someone who's willing to think about an epidemiological study versus like an observational study or a randomized control study, right? That's not always the best route. Then we can talk about saturated fat and cholesterol and the diet heart hypothesis and the history of how that came to be, and dispel that myth, which is basically a history lesson. And I don't know if we want to get into all that, but basically, there was a battle of wits and there was some that argued that cholesterol and fat caused heart disease, because heart disease was this big trigger in the 50s and 60s. And we can talk about how over the last decade, more and more research is showing that there is no association with any kind of disease process when it comes to eating red meat. And then talk about all this new, very exciting research, talking about the benefits and the essentialness of cholesterol and saturated fat in your diet to be healthy. Then we can talk about physiology and the fact that your brain is made of cholesterol and saturated fat, and your skin, and that every hormone in your body is built around a cholesterol backbone, and that to vilify cholesterol and to presume that eating cholesterol drives cholesterol into your arteries and plaques is just simple thinking that has not been justified by research. Right. And then you can take the ancestral argument and say that, well, you cannot survive on plant food alone. And if you look at someone in the bush, in the jungle, someone in a survival situation, what are the components of life that it comes down to? Water, some salt, and which can be a plant source, and then meat, but specifically fat, right? So you can't survive on just pure protein. You need fat. So when you look at survivalists and people that are like really living off the land, it's fat that is like the number one cherished commodity. So there's all of these different angles, and it just depends, I think, on the person and why it's such a nuanced conversation. And I generally don't go down the, meat was vilified by the Seventh-day Adventist Church, and that was very much involved in our, the development of our food recommendations, and that really this is a religious argument that is anchored in all sorts of craziness. And by the way, none of this is a conspiracy, because you could go on Wikipedia and look up the Seventh-day Adventist Church and how they were involved in driving red meat out of our diet. It's so many layers, right? So I think the first step for anyone listening is to accept that the recommendations are bad, and that myth, the red meat myth, is just that. The fiber myth is just a myth. Eating all this fiber is not good for anyone. That a plant-based diet or plants, fruits and vegetables are so healthy for you. That's a myth, guys. Like, I'm sorry. And that's a tougher one for people to swallow. People still struggle with it. Even people in our space struggle with that. I know people that recommend eating red meat and then still talk about eating the rainbow. And I'm like, so you have a rainbow when you're a hunter-gatherer? You just had a rainbow of fruits and vegetables in your backyard? You had a backyard? Like, what are you talking about? This is all driven by modern agricultural practices. So, I think the fun part for me is to try to get someone's brain, get their perspective to that moment where we discovered agriculture, we started using agriculture, and drive their brain to the fact that we subsisted and exist and thrived and dominated the planet for such a long time without agriculture. And what did that look like? And that's a fun place, I think, to start, because I don't think you can ignore that. It's common knowledge. I mean, again, if you don't believe in evolution, I suppose, then that's a whole different conversation, but I've never faced that issue. So that's kind of the different angles I take. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, for sure. I was in the boat for a while where I was never like a vegetarian, but very heavy with the veggies. Every day I would have like this big salad, and I'd put a piece of protein on it. I got away from meat for a while. Anyways, actually, since the pandemic started, I don't know why that sort of triggered me to get into, I guess I was listening to more and more podcasts, Paul Saladino, guys like this, and started reading up on it, realizing that, I'm an active guy, but I feel like I'm missing a lot of things with, red meat. And, I'm an animal guy too. So I got away from it partly because of, is it humane? And I realized that you can get, grass-fed, grass-finished, like humanely raised, regenerative farming, like good, sustainable practices from farms that are doing it right. And I think those are the farms that we need to sort of keep going, right? Sort of getting people to realize that, there's a right way to raise an animal and then use it as nutrition.
Yeah. And I, another point I make to people when we're having that vegetarian, vegan versus, sort of an animal-based diet argument is, if your reason for being vegan or vegetarian or plant-based is because of farming practices, then being vegan or vegetarian or plant-heavy you don't bypass a negative and harmful food system. The way you support a healthy food system is regenerative agriculture. And that's whether that's plants or animals, you have to understand agriculture. And when you understand regenerative agriculture, you realize that it's both. It's not one or the other. Just buying plant products. For most people, that means you're buying a lot of Monsanto corn, you're buying a lot of wheat, you're eating a lot of soybean oil, and it's really, really bad for you. And if you're just going to stick to local, organic plant products, then you're fine. But that's not the reality for most people. That's not. It's a bit of a fantasy. And I think that any farmer that's going to be doing farming right is going to be raising plants and animals in a sustainable, thoughtful, and loving way. And so you don't need to be vegan or vegetarian to support to support healthy raising of animals and plants. And that's the thing, is you have to understand that the corn that you're buying is just as susceptible to being like treated poorly as the cow. Like, if you're buying GMO corn that's covered in Roundup, you're not buying anything that's good for you or good for the planet. Right. And so when I see someone buying a Beyond Burger or one of these fake meat products that's full of seed oils, full of GMO plants, full of processing and chemicals that are just unnatural, like, these people are missing the whole point. And it's not that they're they're manipulated, or they're not spending the time to do the research and understand how to do what it is that they're trying to do. And so I really try to come at those folks from a loving place, because I think our heart is in the same place. I think our goals are the same. Right. But, you know, to see a documentary on Netflix and then change your whole eating strategy around it, not have any physician guidance, not understand the boxed products you're buying, it's foolish. So you got to be thoughtful. You've got to understand, and you've got to challenge yourself to get educated.
Right. And there's so much out there, right? It's like there's so almost too, you know, is it too much education to some degree, right? You could be confused. And that's why I like sort of your simplistic route is like, you know, I have my 10 principles I talked about in like my first podcast that I did. And then you have your five pillars. And when you keep it sort of simple like this, it you know, it makes it attainable for individuals to better their health. And another thing I wanted to sort of get into a little bit was your routine and sort of your daily eating habits. I'm always curious. What's your? I'm a big morning ritual guy, although it's been changed a little bit. So now I have 2 dogs, just a little bit. But what's your morning ritual, and how do you go about with your daily eating habits as well?
So I'm big on rituals and habits, and that's how you stick to being healthy, is doing kind of some things over and over and over again, because that's how you're going to change your body slowly and your mind. Mm-hmm. So, okay, let's talk about food first. So I follow a Sapien lifestyle. So we have principles for that too. So those 5 principles that we talked about, I know a lot of folks have similar things, and it's because there is a war of information and everyone's trying to battle to like help people and educate people. So we all have our own things. I don't really think about those 5 because I live a lifestyle that is consistent with those. Right. But for food, this is the heart of my approach to food. Intermittent fasting is a misnomer. It is a baseline. So for me, 16-8 method. You've all heard about that. I'm sure listening to your podcast based on what you're telling me. 16-8 method. I don't say 16-8 fasting. I call it the method because to me, that is baseline. That is not a fast. That is what everyone should be doing. We should be teaching people from a very young age that you don't need to eat breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and that stuffing your face first thing in the morning with carbs is not a good idea. Mm-hmm. Some people can do different strategies, but most people don't need to eat so often. I eat 6 to 8 hours a day, 7 days, 6 or 7 days a week, 1 or 2 days a week. I will throw in an OMAD day. Mm-hmm. I think OMAD is a great strategy to really boost your metabolism and keep you fresh. Then a couple times a month, I'll eat all day. I'll be honest with you. I say that. I don't know that I actually do it that much. I think sometimes we'll just have
like a cheat day.
Yeah, people, I say that, but I think a lot of the time, sorry, I'm just clipping here. A lot of the time, I end up eating like a really big breakfast because I love my big breakfast, and then I don't really
you fall asleep.
I don't really, yeah. Well, no, I don't really end up having that big dinner or that big lunch. I end up like feeling satisfied, and so I think fasting, however you want to call it, is the heart of my diet and my day to day, and I am not beholden to food. I am able to go without food for a long period of time without feeling weird. I actually start thinking faster and being more sharp. Now, when you start working out a lot, you got to be a little more thoughtful about when you eat. Mm-hmm. So I eat that's a basic part of my day. I focus all of my meals on protein. Mm-hmm. Sometimes I will have a carnivore day. I'll have a carnivore week where I eat very, very little plant food. Mm-hmm. That is with the caveat of I'm almost always eating a fermented vegetable or two. Okay. I'm Russian and I grew up eating fermented vegetables. And when I figured all this stuff out and I realized how important fermented foods are, I just eat it all the time. I would say.
You make it yourself?
I buy it. No,
okay.
I have, there's there's great all natural sauerkraut and pickles, and I eat a ton of olives. I go to the Russian store from time to time, and I'll stock up on all sorts of weird fermented things like watermelon, which is a fun thing that most people haven't tried. Okay. Pickled Pattisons are super fun, which is this kind of little squash. pickled tomatoes, if you ever tried those. Anyway, it's just some fun ideas, but for the most part, it's like a lot of pickles, olives, and sauerkraut, and then kimchi when my fiance will let me have it in my fridge because it's stinky. Um, so that's really it. And if I'm not feeling well, I'll make sure to not fast. So when you're feeling ill or when you like need a little more energy, that's not a time to fast, but that's also not a time to eat crappy carbs. So
Right.
I'll have like a lot of protein and healthy fat, and I'll increase my food intake when I need more juice. Um, and then as far as like morning routine, I'm a pretty busy guy, but I like to spend the first half hour to hour of my day, depending on how busy I am, playing with my dog
Mm.
and hanging out with my girl. And we try to like spend some time in the backyard and, breathe. And first thing I do is I drink water, water every day,
Do
first
you
thing.
do you add salt to it? Sea salt or anything to it?
I do sometimes, not first thing in the morning. I
Mhm.
teach people to do that, but
Yeah.
I'm so liberal with my salt intake in general that I think I get plenty of salt. I take my supplements often in the morning. I'm big on supplementation. I take a Mag Complete, so it's multiple magnesium salts. I often will take it 2 times. I'll take it before bed and I'll take it in the morning. Um, I add real salt, either Redmond's real salt or like a Himalayan sea salt into my water, and that's what I cook with. Um, I take a vitamin D3 K2 supplement,
Hmm.
5 to 10,000 units, just depending on how much sun exposure I'm getting. If I spend all day in the sun, I skip that. So again, not mindlessly taking pills, but
Hmm.
thinking about what I actually need.
Right.
Um, if I'm not eating a ton of omega-3 fatty rich foods, which is rare, but sometimes I'm like not having the best meat, whatever, like you have different stuff. So then
Right.
I'll throw in some fish oil. I have some great CBD anti-inflammatory stuff that I take. I like this company, Life Pack Organics, makes like a green tea extract, turmeric, CBD, vitamin C supplement. And I love it because it kind of gives me a lot of anti-inflammatory components. And especially when I'm working out, I really feel like it helps me heal up.
What type
So
of
that's my
workouts?
morning.
What type of workouts? Yeah, what I'm curious, what type of workouts do you do?
So I try to do high intensity interval training.
Hmm.
What is that's a generic term though. People, hear that a lot. I do a lot of kettlebells.
Hmm.
I used to lift a lot to be buff because I really liked the aesthetic. I got there and then I was like, okay, now what?
Hmm.
I started running. I really love running. I really love being outside and running in the sun.
Yeah.
Um, I'll run. I don't know that I recommend running for everyone. It's pretty tough on the body, but for me, I can run 3 to 5 miles and feel awesome, and it doesn't really break me down.
Hmm.
I used to run like longer, 6, 7, 8 miles, and I found that I was really getting some chronic like joint stuff. And despite everything I would do, I'd stretch, it didn't matter.
Right.
My hips and my knees would start hurting. So I found my sweet spot, that 3 to 4 miles, and I try to do that 3 or 4 times a week.
Hmm.
I'll do yoga when I can.
Yeah.
I was doing a ton of hot yoga right before the pandemic. All of the studios are now not even like closed. They don't exist anymore,
Yeah.
which is
Sad.
devastating.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry, sitting in your living room and doing hot yoga is not the same. I like the camaraderie
I
of
was the
it.
same way. I
Yeah,
was a big hot yoga, loved it. And yeah, I've
it's life
been,
changing.
yeah, I'll do it first thing. Well, I was for a while doing it first thing in the morning, not hot yoga, but you can sort of build your own internal heat, and
Yeah.
it's definitely better than nothing. But yeah, I miss the studio and doing that, just getting up and moving. Um, Especially if you're really active. I mean, I'm a big golfer, so like hips are,
Yeah.
got to keep those mobile. Um, who? Go ahead. We're gonna say
Oh
something.
no, the last thing I was gonna say is I
Yeah.
try to play stuff with my friends as often as
Okay.
I can. I am not like a great athlete,
Right.
but I could get out there and shoot the ball. I could get out there and swing the racket. I'll
Keeps you
get on my
young.
rollerblades. I'll get on my bike. I don't care. Just do stuff. I find that the more stuff you do with people, the better. And I'm not
Right.
one of these people that's telling people to stay home and not see their friends. I think that's a bad recommendation for the record.
Right.
I was a little cautious saying that before. I'm pretty confident that the recommendations that they're giving for COVID-19 are not working. I think it's obvious.
Yeah.
And to continue to give the same recommendations when they're not working is ridiculous. It's just like the nutrition paradigm. Hey, here's a bad recommendation. Oh, it's not working. Well, it's your fault, not our fault. No, it's not our fault. It's not people's fault. What's happening is there's bad recommendations and very, very myopic, short-sighted stuff going on. So, if you're listening to this, go out and be thoughtful, but go outside and do something physical. Play with your dog, play some tennis, go for a jog. If you got those rollerblades from the 1990s, go put them back on.
It's funny you say that. I thought about getting back into rollerblading. I really did. I looked into buying them. I can't believe how much more technology is in rollerblades than there was 20 years ago.
It's fun. I bought these off-road ones. They're like instead of 4 little wheels, I used to have aggressive wheels, like the little wheels to do tricks.
Oh, okay.
I now have 3 giant wheels.
Off-road. And
I could rollerblade on anything, and I go super fast, and I just wear a helmet, and it's super fun.
Yeah, no, I might have to win it. Well, now the weather in Chicago is not for rollerblading, but maybe when it gets nice, I'll get back into that.
Yeah.
Okay, so then we've hit everything here pretty much: stress, sun, food, movement, sleep. What is your thought of what would say maybe a couple strategies around sleep?
Yeah. So what's funny with sleep is most people that come to me and I bring it up and they're like, sure, let's talk about it. No one's sleeping well, especially during the pandemic. It's a little challenging for people. And I say the word sleep hygiene and they've never heard the term. So for people listening, it's a very commonly used term in medicine. And it's very, very simple. And you can Google it, but it's simple things like your bedroom is for sleep and sex. It's a fun way to think about that. If you're going in there, and even people that read in bed, it can be very challenging to then shut your mind down and sleep. Now, some people aren't real big readers and they lay down and they read 3 pages and pass out because they're not really avid readers and the book is just calming them down and knocking them out. Fine. That's not what I'm talking about. Right. But if you're a reader like I am and you get engaged and stimulated, we can now replicate. We can also just use the word TV instead of the book. Mm-hmm. You're not going to fall asleep because your brain is in this activated entertainment mode. Right. So I always just try to teach people that if you can, obviously everyone has different, situations, but if you can make your bedroom a place where your body and your mind know that you're going there to sleep, then you're going to sleep better. Don't eat in bed. Don't play games in bed. Maybe you could play in the morning. You can wrestle a little. And I know that's a fun morning routine that some people do with their partners. But my point is you shouldn't make, your bedroom a place of entertainment. It should be a place of sleep and solitude and rest.
Right. No cell phones in the bed.
Yeah. Right? Yeah. But that's the comments that, I like the idea of sleep hygiene as a concept that should be used. So right now we know people aren't sleeping well. People are having weird dreams. They're stuck at home. Their whole life has been turned upside down. I've never heard a single news article talk about, hey, what can you do to protect yourself from COVID? Hey, well, you can build your immune system by making sure you're sleeping well. Sleep hygiene is really simple and basic. And here's some basic concepts. Never. And I challenge anyone listening to this to find one sleep hygiene commentary that talks about sleep boosting your immune system. This is common sense. This is well known. This is well researched. We don't talk about it. So I think that rather than having some hack like blue blockers or whatever trick, you don't need that. You just need the simple concept of respect your sleep. If you're a person who thinks that you're going to sleep when you die, you're going to die sooner and you're going to get dementia sooner. That's what the evidence is showing. People that don't sleep do badly when they're older. It catches up to you. So I think that just like I want people to be thoughtful about the food they put in their body and not just jump on a paradigm or some bandwagon or some guru, learn about it, learn from your gurus, learn from the organizations that are out there promoting stuff. Do the same thing with sleep. Don't just be a guru for meditation. Figure out what really manages your stress. Maybe meditation's not great for you. Maybe you need a different kind of meditation. I know I'm jumping around, but it's because all the concepts that we're talking about today are big picture approach to life. And you don't need to have a You don't need to buy a product. You don't need to become a member of this tribe or that, which although can be very helpful. And again, Sapien Tribe is to support you. And there's many other organizations. Everything we just talked about is simple, free.
Mm-hmm.
And you just need to be convinced that it will help change your life. And if you just chip away at every one of those little things, just every day, what can I tweak here? What can I tweak there to include in my life? You'll get healthier.
Yeah.
And it's for sure. There's no question here. It's not, I don't need it, to do a study. This is simple.
Yeah. No, that's great. And I'll pose this question because I pose this to a lot of the guests that I have on is, what would you say, and we've probably touched on it already, but if an individual, middle-aged individual is looking to get their body back or even their mind back to what it once was when they were in their 20s, it's a common question. What one tip would you give them?
Well, other than eat a sapien diet and lifestyle, get rid of the crappy food and start eating nutrient dense, high protein, high healthy fat foods. Other than that, which is I think the core recommendation that we're all talking about in this space,
Right.
it would be to activate your mind and body. So going back to your morning routine, I think if I was in my middle age and I was struggling, the first thing I would do is wake up every day, drink a large cup of water, go outside for a long walk, get my sun, sunbathe, and maybe simultaneously listen to a very stimulating podcast, because you got to use your brain and you have to learn something new to be excited for the world and to excited for each day. I think if you created that kind of morning routine, like you mentioned, where you were getting your movement, getting your sun, getting your brain stimulated and activated, you would decrease your stress levels, increase your healthy hormone production, increase your vitamin D production, get your body moving, and you would set yourself up for a successful day. It would be much easier to fast in the morning and do your intermittent fasting window. If you did that, it would be much easier to listen to another podcast or act on something that you learned during that walk, because you would be stimulated and excited. And I think that the idea that a human being wakes up and goes to the kitchen to eat is handicapping them. You wake up, open your eyes, get hydrated, and go do something physical. Go do something intellectual. Okay, so say you're in your middle age and you have some serious physical limitations. Fine. Do something intellectual, like develop, read something really powerful, watch something really powerful if you can't read. Learn something and then challenge yourself to do something new from what you just learned. Very, very simple. It's what we expect our children to do.
I think you lose touch into that. I actually, speaking about working the brain, I actually took up piano.
Nice.
Yeah, and it's been great. Learning something as an adult is definitely a different experience than when you're a kid, because a lot of times when you're a kid, someone just forces you to go to piano lessons and then you don't sort of see the progress. But I've been doing it now for over 5 years, and it's cool to sort of see how you progress and just get better and better at it. And you just I think you just appreciate it more. So like you said, learning an instrument, painting, whatever. I mean, I painting, yeah. I mean, 15 minutes a day, right? Like it's those simple little things and they add up over time.
There's a million reasons not to do something. The only reason you need to do something is that you want to be better than you were the day before. Right. And so I think a lot of people, I'm a musician, you can see in the background there. I got a bunch of instruments and stuff. And, cool. When I was young, I was always about like trying to be as good as this person or as good as that person. And now I'm just about like entertaining myself. Right. And I find that I make more beautiful music and people like it more when I do play, because I'm doing it for myself. So something that maybe is a little bit interesting or different than what I've talked about on other podcasts is, when I was really young and I was figuring out my path, I was always raging against the machine. I was always like doing my own thing. And it continues to this day. I'm always like finding my own path. I read Ayn Rand's books, The Fountainhead and Atlas Shrugged. Some of your listeners, I'm sure, will remember it. And a lot of her stuff has been misinterpreted as sort of like, really like like conservative or something like that, but it's not. So what she taught me was that it is the idea of individualism. If you do something, anything that you're meant to do, that you want to do for yourself to the best of your abilities, that is how you will best serve the rest of the world, your family, the people around you. I really don't like the idea that I am a doctor to serve my community. It's not true. I'm a doctor because it makes me feel good to help people. Right. I feel awesome when my patient comes back and they're crushing it and they're losing weight and they're getting off drugs. I'm not doing it for them. I'm doing it for me because it makes me feel good. When I was in the hospital and people would come in and I would go through the hospital-driven protocol of healing them, it did not feel as good. It was fine. I'm happy to like serve my role, right? Like I had a role in the hospital and I did my thing, and sometimes it would help people and sometimes it wouldn't, but it didn't really matter because I was just doing what I was like trained to do, and it was fine. But I never felt that sense of like real fulfillment and purpose. Yeah. Being of service. Being of service does not just mean you're doing things for other people. It means you are serving people by doing the best version of yourself. And so if that means playing piano because you connect like with your inner child, your artistic side, your inner child, your artistic side, your spirituality, and then you're able to go and do a podcast and be really thoughtful and tempered because you're like in a better mental space, then that's what it means. But I think that people, and that's why I love America. I'm a Russian immigrant. I came from a communist world. My parents never let me forget that. So, I'm very, very proud of the way we operate in America. And I think that, this idea that, you have to do something for someone else is nonsense. That's not how the human brain is programmed. You're programmed to survive on your own and in your small group. And if you can, we now live in a globalized world, but if you can behave from that core space, if you can drive your day-to-day behaviors from like, I want to do the best for me, I want to make me happy and make me the best, then I do believe that people are inherently good and loving, and that momentum will help you take care of your loved ones, be the best neighbor, be nice to someone in a grocery store, right? Like if you're happy at home and you're doing the things you need to do to have a good mental space, then when you go to the grocery store, and it sucks going to the grocery store right now, we have masks, everyone's scared. It's like not a good vibe. But I'm telling you, just being calm and smiling and being courteous at people, that's how you can benefit someone else. And I think that doesn't come from being like, I have to be nice. Oh my God, I have to be nice. No, it comes from like, I am happy. I am content. I am satisfied. And now I can project that energy onto everyone around me.
Well said. Well said. There's your water.
Yeah. Love it.
Well, wow. We've hit on pretty much everything. Sleep, stress, sun, food, movement, intermittent fasting, morning routines, daily eating habits, and even the future of medicine. So hopefully more podcasts like this will come out and talk about how medicine should change, and it'll benefit everybody in the long haul. Where would you say the best? Because honestly, if you were in Chicago, I'd go to your practice. I'd go to Evolve. I've gone to a few, let's just say like holistic preventive care places. Haven't quite found one that I'm quite getting behind, but what's the best place for people to find you?
So I do telemedicine visits. It's, if people really want to do a consultation with me, they can literally book from anywhere in the world.
Yeah.
My EHR will send a Zoom link, just like the Zoom link you sent me for this, and we can talk. Can't do it really like for health insurance, under health insurance, because that's a state to state. I have to be like medically licensed everywhere, but I can give people advice. And a lot of what I'm doing isn't per se medical, right? Like I can't manage your blood pressure meds from California, but I could talk to you about this stuff. So that's one way.
Right.
But for sure, I'm on Instagram at drgaryevolve. I'm really available there. That's kind of my number one platform. It's hard for me to jump around on different platforms, and that's kind of where we're at. But also Sapien Tribe is a great way if you really want to be involved and you're not here, you can join the tribe, and we do private Zoom calls with the group a few times a month. Brian's a big part of that. I'm a big part of that. We have a couple health coaches that participate.
That's cool, man.
Sapien.org is our website. We're working on Food Lies. Brian's spending all of his energy on it. That movie's going to be amazing.
Mm-hmm.
I would say the Sapien podcast is a great place. It's similar to your podcast. It's about health and wellness. And, we have some great guests, and we just launched season 2. Brian's podcast is, a lot of what I've learned comes from the Peak Human podcast and all of the amazing scientists from all around the world. And God, what he put together at that podcast should really be the core of a curriculum for doctors. That's really what that should be. Just reach out to me on Instagram. I think that's best. I'm also on Facebook now as a doctor, but more like just to get my name out there.
Yeah. And I'll put all these links in the show notes so people can find you and reach out to you. Because, like telemedicine, that's a good route for a lot of people,
Yeah.
Yeah,
it's awesome. I think right now I'm still able to use it without any restrictions. I'm wondering if they reinitiate. There's a lot of restrictions on telemedicine before COVID. COVID, one of the silver linings is it made the insurance companies have to say, hey, we're going to pay for telemedicine. Right. So that was great. And I was ready to launch that. I launched that immediately, literally February. It was integrated in my system. I was ready to go. I just had to click a button and pay a little extra, and that's fine. But I've had a lot of folks reach out to me, and then some folks, it's really, right now it's a weird time, but people will travel to LA as a trip because it's a fun trip. And then they'll come and book an appointment and spend an hour with me, and we'll go through a lot of this stuff. So I'm available, everyone. I love to talk. I love to help people. I think everyone needs a little bit of different guidance, and I think that's what I'm able to provide. And
it's refreshing. So
thank you.
Yeah. Well,
it's
I
awesome to be
you coming on the show. And thanks for listening.
Thanks, Brian.
Yeah. Thanks for listening to the Get Lean, Eat Clean podcast. I understand there are millions of other podcasts out there, and you've chosen to listen to mine, and I appreciate that. Check out the show notes at briangrin.com for everything that was mentioned in this episode. Feel free to subscribe to the podcast and share it with a friend or family member that's looking to get their body back to what it once was. Thanks again, and have a great day.